Greetings from our channel again. At 75, she is disclosing the unsettling reality, the unsuccessful clones, the FBI threats, and the sinister secret that caused her to turn down millions of people's requests to come back. Sigourney Weaver was born Susan Alexandra Weaver on October 8, 1949. Her family was already well known. Pat Weaver, her father, was well known in the television industry. He was the creator of The Tonight Show and The Today Show. This permanently altered television. In order to raise her family, her mother, Elizabeth Inglis, gave up acting after appearing in The 39 Steps in 1935. Sigourney had well-known relatives as well. Her godfather was Steve Allen, the original Tonight Show host, and her uncle was Comic Doodles Weaver. Despite everything, Sigourney still felt out of place. She frequently felt neglected because her parents were preoccupied with their jobs. She once compared herself to a tiny kid alone in a large mansion. She didn't depend on her family's prosperity. She chose to study English literature at Stanford University rather than pursue a career in performing. Her college life wasn't typical. She truly played the flute, lived in a treehouse with her partner, and enjoyed dressing up as an elf. She performed in a few school plays, such as Desire, A Streetcar, but she felt that being an actress was ridiculous. After graduating from college, she went to Israel to work on a farm, which changed everything. She applied to Yale School of Drama after realizing how much she missed delivering stories. It wasn't easy at Yale. While Sigourney was confined to portraying elderly women, her classmates included Meryl Streep, who consistently received the finest parts. Which, for someone in their early 20s, was somewhat offensive. She was not believed by the instructors. She was even informed by one that she lacked talent. "You ought to go." She got motivated to disprove them rather than give up. However, at the age of 14, a significant event occurred. Her name was changed. She felt that the name Sigourney was more fitting for her after seeing it in The Great Gatsby. By 6th grade, she was already 5 feet 11 inches, and she thought Susan didn't match someone that tall. She felt stronger after changing her name, even if people poked fun of her height by calling her the giant spider. She later benefited in Hollywood from her unusual name. When Sigourney appeared, some casting directors were taken aback because they assumed her name was masculine. In fact, it made her more visible. When she met Christopher Durang, a classmate who likewise felt alienated, things began to change. They began collaborating on odd experimental plays. She portrayed a woman who housed live creatures inside her body in the 1976 drama Titanic. Although it was strange, it demonstrated her ability to simultaneously blend strangeness with emotion. Then they wrote the song Spiel for Das Lusitania, a chaotic play that made fun of business and violence. While singing about money, Sigourney portrayed a sex worker shattering champagne bottles. Warren Beatty noticed it and dubbed it punk theater, despite critics believing it was crazy. Instead of delivering a somber monologue for her final Yale performance, she performed a piece about a lady seducing a refrigerator. She was let down by the professors. However, she got her first off-Broadway job after Durang surreptitiously gave the screenplay to a few agencies. She was a part of the strange theater scene in New York prior to Alien. Together, she and Durang continued to push the boundaries of what was considered appropriate for plays. A hedgehog puppet representing capitalism was used into Das Lusitania Songspiel, a retelling of Romeo and Juliet in which the lovers yelled Marxist catchphrases. And the scene in which Sigourney sank while singing while dressed as the Titanic. Despite becoming a cult hit, the majority of critics detested it. She was then discovered by renowned director Mike Nichols, who went on to put her in a Broadway production. Her debut movie role wasn't particularly noteworthy. She spent 6 seconds at Annie Hall, 1977. She was just standing next to Woody Allen in a trench coat, with no lines. As well as Diane Keaton. Later, she said, "I earned $50 and bought a sandwich with it." Despite the embarrassment, it ultimately benefited her. After remembering her, Juliet Taylor, the casting director, recommended her for Alien. Furthermore, the girl from Annie Hall's performance in Alien was even more unexpected because no one anticipated her fighting a monster. Later, a game called Where's Sigourney? Was played by fans, searching Annie Hall for her. It was quite humorous. She was just in the background for her first significant movie scene, but she would soon be out of the background. She was going to be one of the most well-known figures in the history of science fiction. Although it nearly didn't happen, Sigourney Weaver's performance in Alien revolutionized science fiction. The genders of the characters were not specified in the 1976 original script. However, masculine pronouns were utilized in early drafts. Nobody anticipated a female lead. Making Ripley a woman was a risky decision made by director Ridley Scott, and 20th Century Fox president Alan Ladd Jr. Weaver was an unknown actress at the age of 29. Not even the first choice was hers. Weaver was cast, but Meryl Streep and Glenn Close were also considered. She performed as Ripley in a way that had never been witnessed before. She wasn't helpless. She had no intention of waiting to be saved. She knew how to survive and was tough and intelligent. Hollywood, however, didn't value that. While co-star John Hurt received $250,000, she only received $35,000. At first, Fox didn't even want her. They believed that a female action hero would not be effective. Scott needed to disprove them. She appeared strong and self-assured, operating machinery because he had her train with former Marines. The gamble paid well. The male captain, portrayed by Tom Skerritt, died first, shocking the audience. Ripley was more than a supporting role model. The last person standing was her. Nobody anticipated Sigourney Weaver's 1987 Oscar nomination for Aliens. Science fiction was not taken seriously in Hollywood at the time. The Academy tended to recognize romantic or emotional dramas rather than action-packed films with explosions and aliens. However, Weaver's portrayal of Ellen Ripley was too potent to overlook. She differed from the other nominees that year, who portrayed women who were going through personal hardships or tragedy. Ripley was unique. She was bold, intelligent, and strong. She fought off terrible beasts and led men into war. And kept a young girl safe. She displayed both emotion and strength simultaneously, which is uncommon in action films. Weaver did not, however, win the Oscar. For Children of a Lesser God, it went to Marlee Matlin, who became the first deaf actor to win. Because science fiction was still not respected by the Academy, many people thought Weaver had been defrauded. However, just her nomination made a difference. People viewed Sandra Bullock's Oscar win for Gravity years later as evidence that Weaver had paved the way for women in action films. Weaver did something that had never been done before in 1989, 2 years later. In a single night, she took home 2 Golden Globes. No actor has ever received 2 acting prizes on the same night before, and no one has since. One was for Gorillas in the Mist, in which she portrayed real-life scientist Dian Fossey. Her brilliance was evident in these 2 parts. She totally changed into Foss in Gorillas in the Mist, a lady who devoted her life to gorilla conservation. Weaver lived around actual gorillas for months in order to understand Foss's behavior. It was a difficult experience. While filming in Rwanda, she contracted dysentery and refused to utilize a stunt double for situations that were perilous. She portrayed the exact opposite in Working Girl, a cunning, haughty boss who takes credit from her assistant. Hollywood insiders believe she must have been channeling every bad boss they had ever encountered since she made the role so realistic. She demonstrated her ability to do anything by winning those 2 trophies in a single evening. "I think the voters got confused and checked my name twice," Weaver said after laughing about it. She didn't want to become stuck in the same role over and over again, even after all this success. Hollywood continued to offer Jolie challenging action jobs after Aliens, but she declined. She wished to avoid being stereotyped. Even the huge hits Total Recall and The Silence of the Lambs were rejected by her. Rather, she selected films that presented her with various challenges. She earned a BAFTA for her portrayal of a calm, dissatisfied housewife in The Ice Storm. In Death and the Maiden, she portrayed a woman facing her former tormentor in a somber and sad performance. The director referred to the job as emotional surgery since it was so intense. She also left an impression even while she wasn't on TV. She demonstrated her ability to enthrall people without being seen when she provided Wally with her voice. But she was always attracted back by Sci-Fi. Only on her terms did she return for Alien 3. She insisted that Ripley's tale have purpose rather than be merely another mindless action sequel. She wanted a meaning for her character's demise. Nevertheless, Sigourney Weaver's Alien 3 experience was nothing short of a nightmare. The final version of the film was entirely different from the original concept. A group of monks dwelt in seclusion on a wooden monastery planet at the beginning of the story. They thought the xenomorph was their penalty for sin, and they thought Ripley was some sort of divine test. In 1990, Fox approved this version, which was written by Vincent Ward. There was a lot of unsettling religious imagery in it. Candlelight ceremonies, hand-carved wooden passageways, and a slowly burning horror that blended fear and faith. However, the studio canceled the entire project 3 weeks prior to the start of filming. The movie had no plot after the script was discarded and the sets were only partially constructed. Because test viewers detested the concept of Newt, the young girl from Aliens, being slain off-screen, Fox became quite alarmed. Thus, they changed everything to a jail planet setting at the last minute. Millions of money were squandered, and the entire production descended into chaos. According to Weaver, Hollywood ceased taking chances at this point and began producing films purely for financial gain. Fox brought in David Fincher to oversee this mayhem. He had never made a feature film before and was only 28 years old. Only videos of music. And everything he did was under studio supervision from the beginning. He had to argue with executives every morning just to get the sequences he wanted. The script he was working on had been repeatedly torn apart and rewritten. Previous drafts included one by Eric Red of Near Dark, which was more horror-oriented, and another by William Gibson, a cyberpunk author who wrote about Cold War bioweapons. That was all gone. Walter Hill's Prison Break draft was used in parts of the film, while Ward's Monastery script's spooky spiritual themes were entirely removed. The studio repeatedly turned down Fincher's gloomy, eerie aesthetic. In order to make Ripley's grief seem genuine and agonizing, he wanted the opening titles to feature Newt's autopsy. Fox, however, cut it because it was too gloomy. On location, he was made fun of by certain crew members, and one producer even told him that he could name it Alien 3 if he urinated against a wall for 2 hours. Even so, it will earn $30 million. After the film, Fincher temporarily left Hollywood because he was so irritated. When he came back, he refused to let studios influence his films, which is why movies like Seven happened his way, on his terms. Weaver faced challenges of her own. In Alien 3, Ripley underwent a radical change. She wore simple jail clothes, had a shaved head, and appeared exhausted from radiation exposure. Makeup professionals applied prosthetic glue to her scalp to get this look, but it resulted in serious allergic responses. Filming was still delayed because they had to use medical-grade adhesive when she developed excruciating rashes. She even got into a fight over shaving her head. Fox wanted a wig because they believed that audiences wouldn't find her attractive enough, but Fincher wanted it real. Weaver declined. Ripley wasn't there to be desirable, she subsequently claimed. Her purpose was to live. This was not to Fox's liking. They retaliated by taking away her co-producer credit from early previews and even using the tagline "The bitch is back" to advertise the film. Weaver was enraged, calling it cheap and offensive. She had made a concerted effort to influence the film. She was strong enough to insist for script approval after Aliens. She demanded that Ripley must also die when the studio killed off Newt and Hicks, or else it would seem meaningless. But she was exhausted by the constant rewrites. She later said that she felt defeated and worn out by the entire situation. She also learnt about Hollywood's treatment of women from this event. She was referred to as hysterical by male bosses for her innovative ideas. The crew disliked being told what to do by a lady. It even made her consider giving up acting. She yet stood up for Fincher in spite of everything. Although she thought the studio was interfering with the film, she appreciated what Fincher was attempting to accomplish. After the film's release, Fincher himself had no desire to be involved. "No one hates it more than me," he remarked, referring to it as a nightmare. He declined to participate in the 2003 release of an extended edit of the movie that restored 30 minutes of removed content from Fox. The scene where Ripley died was the one he detested the most. She was initially intended to jump into molten lead as a sacrifice. Fox, however, made a last-minute alteration, causing the xenomorph to explode from her chest as she collapsed. Fincher believed it to be pointless and foolish, only a duplicate of the well-known conclusion from Terminator 2. Weaver, however, continues to feel conflicted. Although she is aware of the film's shortcomings, she nonetheless finds it to be daring. Because Fincher didn't make it safe, she appreciates him. It was quite risky to kill Newt. However, she believed that it gave Ripley's sorrow more substance. The movie has developed a cult following over time. These days, some admirers value its ideas of body autonomy and corporate exploitation. Weaver thinks it was worthy of more than the hatred it received. In the 1997 film Alien Resurrection, Sigourney Weaver made a comeback, but she wasn't the same Ripley. She portrayed Ripley 8, a clone, who had lost their humanity. Scientists had given her extraordinary powers by combining her DNA with that of the xenomorphs. She had acid for blood and was faster and stronger. Even the aliens seemed to perceive her, as if she were one of them. Weaver wanted her movements to convey this. She stalked, squatted, and peered through people like a predator rather than merely walking. "I'm the mother of the monster," she even hissed. In addition to being deadly, Ripley 8 was also missing. She discovered a lab full of failed clones of herself, twisted, malformed, and in pain, one of the most unsettling scenes in the movie. She was urged to murder it by one of them. She came to understand that she was more than just a replica of Ripley. Weaver defended the film despite criticism that it was too strange. She claimed that Ripley had changed. She wanted to investigate this new side of herself. It was not even intended for one of the film's most well-known scenes to unfold as it did. In one sequence, Ripley had to make the shot while throwing a basketball over her shoulder without seeing. Weaver declined to employ computer-generated imagery to make it look real. She trained with an NBA coach for several weeks. The crew anticipated spending the entire day on the day of filming in an attempt to capture the ideal shot. Then, however, she succeeded on her first attempt. The entire set was in disbelief. During the scene, Ron Perlman utterly lost his character and yelled, "Holy shit!" His reply wasn't in the screenplay, so they had to edit the sequence immediately. It is still discussed, referring to it as one of the biggest flukes in film history. "I could have won a halftime show," Weaver even joked. It was the one genuine moment in a film full of computer-generated effects. When the movie first came out, it received a lot of negative reviews, but eventually, people began to appreciate it for its absurdity. There were some really odd parts of it, such as a human xenomorph hybrid with large, eerie eyes. Additionally, a scientist was interacting with the aliens as though they were his pets. Then Weaver appeared, embracing the craziness wholeheartedly. She said things like, "Who do I have to fuck to get off this boat?" that were absurd. She even licked Winona Ryder's face clean of blood in one moment. Later, she claimed to like the strangeness of it all. She appreciated the director's peculiar vision. In fact, there were certain scenes that were effective. Resembled the underwater chase, in which the crew was pursued by xenomorphs through flooded corridors. It was overwhelming and terrible. However, some scenarios, such as the one in which the hybrid alien is drawn out into space through a tiny hole, simply didn't work. It was dubbed one of the worst CGI scenes ever by critics. Weaver acknowledged that the film had issues, but she had no regrets about making it. "It's something, but it's not Alien," she said. Weaver then ensured that Ripley's tale would not be adapted into a low-budget action movie franchise. She flatly refused to appear in Alien vs. Predator, 2004, because of this. The idea seemed absurd to her. She compared it to forcing Jaws to battle Godzilla. Since she didn't want Ripley to be revived just for financial gain, she had previously requested that the character be killed off in Alien 3. She was upset when Fox chose to become AVP. She believed that Ripley's sacrifice was being destroyed in order to produce a hasty, stupid action film. She even accused AVP of undermining Ridley Scott's ambitions for a legitimate third Alien movie. She never changed her viewpoint over the years. Instead than being merely another action figure in a franchise, she hoped that Ripley will be recognized as a genuine sci-fi hero. Weaver managed to bring Ripley back through video games even after she finished the films. She made a comeback to voice Ripley in the video game Alien Isolation 2014, which was about Amanda, Ripley's daughter. For a special objective that allowed players to relive sequences from the original Alien, the game's developers invited her to record dialogue. To make it seem authentic, she even got back together with the original actors. In contrast to the subsequent films, this game prioritized survival and horror over action. Weaver cherished that. According to her, this is what Alien 3 ought to have been. Since she had rejected so many extraterrestrial ideas, fans were surprised that she consented to do it, but this was different for her. "Games allowed Ripley to exist without the baggage of Hollywood," she remarked. Sigourney Weaver did something wild at age 61. In the movie Avatar, The Way of Water, she portrayed a 14-year-old Na'vi girl. She was merely acting, there was no AI or tricks. She should move like a true adolescent, according to James Cameron. She climbed, ran, and even pretended to be uncomfortable. She worked with coaches to restore that enthusiasm and reviewed her old adolescent diaries in order to get ready. Curie's father was unknown for 13 years. He was considered a human by some. Some believed it to be a Na'vi warrior. Some even thought that Ava, the goddess of Pandora, was involved. Weaver threw in her own twist. She created Curie's relationship with the natural world. Cameron adored a scenario in which Carrie develops a bond with underwater creatures that wasn't in the script. Of a 61-year-old pretending to be a teenager, but she disproved them. Everything else was authentic, but the visual effects team used a ton of data to make her appear younger. In The Defenders, she later turned into a villain. Not your typical one, though. Alexandra Reed was merely trying to live her life, not to take over the world. She had stolen organs to live for 500 years. Weaver instructed the authors to distinguish her. She desired for Alexandra to be intelligent and strong in a subdued manner rather than through magic. Her scariest moment? It felt like something from Shakespeare when she tainted someone's tea. She insisted on dying so early in the series, even though Marvel didn't want her to. Emails that were later leaked revealed that Kevin Feige regretted not using her in Eternals. After 20 years, she made a comeback on Broadway. In Masha and Spike and Vanya and Sonia, she portrayed a washed-up actress. It was a tumultuous role. She shattered David Hyde Pierce's rib when she stumbled over a rug one night. Even though her costumes kept breaking, she performed all of her own stunts. She once became entangled in a wig net while performing. People adored her wildness. She once took a 7-minute break from her script, ranting about soap operas from the 1980s. It was incorporated into the production by the playwright. When she requested actual alcohol on stage, the budget nearly fell apart. Her most insane moment? While ill with COVID-19, she performed a matinee in secret. She then said that she simply continued by channeling Masha's craziness. Weaver was able to parody her sci-fi heritage in Galaxy Quest. She portrayed Gwen DeMarco, a figure who made fun of the absurd roles that women were given in space films. One scene where Gwen gripes about the sporadic death traps on board? Weaver's concept. Thinking of all the stupid story holes in Alien 3 gave her the idea. When she was fleeing from a rock monster, she also made up a cue. However, it nearly led to the film receiving an R rating. The screenwriter used an earphone to feed her insults behind the scenes, to enrage her as much as Ripley did. Her outfit turned into a farce. She repeatedly tore her sleeves by accident to make fun of how useless sci-fi attire was. The most peculiar aspect? Weaver's unsuccessful Broadway production was the subject of an old Saturday Night Live spoof that inspired the Bygravthar's hammer cry. Weaver's 37-second cameo in Ghostbusters, Afterlife was more significant than most people thought. She wasn't only having fun with her moment with Bill Murray. It implied that Dana Barrett was secretly paying for the return of the Ghostbusters. She even assisted in rebuilding Phoebe's proton pack, according to cut dialogue. She altered the statement during filming to imply that Dana might possess psychic abilities. Dana survived Gozer, she said, refusing to wear aging cosmetics. Her wrinkles have been earned. The initial plan? The plan was for her to battle Zoe. Weaver declined, arguing that Dana ought to be the only one who maintains composure amid the mayhem. It's uncommon in Hollywood for Sigourney Weaver and Jim Simpson to be married for 40 years. He was serving drinks at a theater festival when they first met in 1983. She invited him to a party even though she was seeing someone else at the time. He remained to assist with cleanup. They went on their first date as a result of that brief encounter. They were married on October 1, 1984, 3 months later. It was a leap of faith, she said. In 1990, Charlotte, their daughter, was born. Charlotte, sometimes known as Char, is a non-binary professor who specializes in digital storytelling and artificial intelligence at Columbia University. Weaver found it difficult to manage her work and parenthood. Char claimed that the process of applying to colleges nearly killed her. She opted to live a tranquil life in New York, hiking and avoiding the drama of Hollywood, even though she was a tremendous star. Early in her career, Weaver had difficulties. Because she was taller than male performers, she was frequently turned down for roles despite being 6 feet tall. She also made a joke about making her feet appear shorter by painting shoes on them. Her celebrity didn't mean anything to her daughter either. Char dismissively said, "That goes in the little box of things I don't need to know," when someone brought up the subject of aliens. Weaver has consistently voiced her opinions on matters that are important to her. She reminds women that heart disease kills more people than other malignancies combined and works with the American Heart Association to increase awareness of the condition. She is also in favor of abortion rights. She portrayed a member of an underground abortion network in Call Jane, 2022, and stated that the film's message is more relevant than ever. After acting in Gorillas in the Mist, she has also dedicated more than 3 decades to advocating for gorilla conservation. She has received recognition for her efforts and is the head of the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund since 1988. Despite being unpopular, she has taken strong positions. Climate activists disrupted her play, The Tempest, in 2025. They were jeered by the audience, but Weaver defended them, claiming that their message aligned with the play's premise. Although Weaver hasn't publicly argued over her own salary, she did contribute to the advancement of women in action films. She demonstrated that women could be the stars of high-budget films with her portrayal as Ripley and Alien. Viola claims that she only receives a tenth of what black actresses make, although earning significantly more. Weaver only received $30,000 for Alien, but she made a lot more money later in her career, particularly with Avatar. By supporting films like Prayers for Bobby, which addressed LGBTQ+ problems, and assisting actresses like Elizabeth Banks in Call Jane, she has also helped other women in Hollywood. Weaver has long advocated for causes such as plastic pollution, deforestation, and climate change as a UN Goodwill Ambassador outside of Hollywood. She has also advocated for refugee rights and works to combat the stigma associated with addiction. She even transformed her New York flat into a gathering place for Greta Thunberg and other climate activists during COVID-19. She ran the possibility of being arrested in 2015 for opposing the Keystone XL pipeline, stating that complicity is silence. Activism is more than just words to Weaver, it's a part of who she is.